Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, Epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am so excited to welcome Lisa Manca. Lisa, welcome. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Hi, Xander. Thanks for having me. I'm an LPCC and yes, I know, woo, and board certified dance movement therapist. And I will tell you all about that. But I'm located in San Francisco area and I work in private practice. I help people heal from trauma and feeling disconnected from their bodies through the use of movement and attachment work.
Absolutely. Look, the first thing that we need to talk about is the fact that I found another LPCC. For those of you who don't understand, LPCC, licensed professional clinical counselor, professional clinical counselor, are very common around the United States. However, in California, we are brand new. The license has only been recognized for something like, I don't know, less than 10 years right now. And so it's really cool that I met you, Lisa, because, you know, I know my number is in the 4,000s. So that tells you.
Mine is 270.
Look at you.
Yeah. So it was like one of the originals. I was like, I can have a license. Woohoo! And I rushed out and they grandfathered some of us in, which was awesome. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was like, wow, everywhere else has LPCCs. Why is it so hard for us to have them, you know?
Well, yeah. And you know, there were things that I learned in graduate school that I was like, wow. So I think part of the reason it took so long for LPCCs to be recognized by California is the licensed marriage and family therapist. Very strong, organization that, and so 75% of the LMFTs are in California.
I was just going to bust out that statistic. I think there's like 75,000 and 50,000 of them are in California.
Yeah.
Right? So whereas ours, we were one of the last, I think it was Nevada and then us for LPCC.
I think we were the last state to recognize
we were absolutely
this.
the last one. And it's the more portable license, I would say. So you can find more LPCCs or the equivalent, probably an LPC everywhere. And for some reason we were like, oh, I don't want that. I didn't want to do marriage and family therapy. I don't know about you, Xander.
I know. I honestly, and you know, this is a bad thing because I majored in history and psychology. I have lots of my friends who are, you know, LMFTs, but it wasn't until I got into graduate school that I was like, oh, they don't just do marriage and family therapy. I had a choice. I could have dual licensed. My degree was set up that I could have had two licenses, but I'm like, okay, well, first of all, why do I need two licenses to do the same thing? Absolutely. And more importantly, as a speaker and someone who's out there, there's so much confusion about marriage and family therapy. I mean, the name itself says that's what you're doing, and yet most LMFTs are just doing regular, I don't want to say regular therapy, but they're not actually doing a lot of work with families and couples.
Yeah, there's a lot of individual counseling. And I think it was just kind of the catch-all. Same with the LCSW, which is the licensed social worker, was the catch-all for if you wanted to do therapy. So I'm actually very happy, and I was happy to be like one of the earlier LPCCs. I think it was exciting for us in California to have that licensure, especially for those of us that fall under the umbrella of creative arts therapists, like a dance therapist or a music therapist or an art therapist. Because for us, we didn't have a pathway to licensure. We weren't under the LMFT or we would have to go through a whole new program to get licensed. And that made no sense if you already just completed 2 years of graduate school. You know?
Absolutely. And so I was like, no, I'm going for the LPCC because it's, I think, more accurately describes who I am and what I do.
Absolutely.
So, and not slamming LMFTs. Trust me, I'm not. But I was surprised with that statistic that most of them are in California, and it's a lot rarer in the rest of the United States. And obviously, there's a lot more LPCCs in the rest of the United States. So, anyway. So I'm sure everyone else is really bored that we just, spent, 5 minutes talking about it. But
they're like, what licensure? What is this about? Yeah,
exactly. But let's talk a little about your work with dance therapy and stuff. Like, how did you get into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. I loved psychology and I loved dance, and I was an undergrad and I wasn't ready to go out in the real world. And I didn't really want, like with psychology, I saw people going into like HR with an undergrad. That wasn't my bent, right? I wanted to help people. So I put into Google dance therapy because I figured there's music therapy, there's art therapy, there must be dance therapy. And I found the American Dance Therapy Association. And they have a list of approved graduate programs that you can go through to be a dance therapist. And I applied to those programs, not quite sure how dance therapy worked or what it was, but I was like, this sounds like it's for me. And that's how I found it. And I kind of fell in love with it. I went into school not quite knowing what it was, but was like, I'm going to check it out. And it turned out to be such a good fit. So that's kind of how I found the field.
Well, that's great. For those who don't know, how does dance therapy kind of function? How does that work?
Yeah, so the American Dance Therapy Association, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's the defines dance therapy as the biopsychosocial use of movement, and that's for healing and for help with mental illness. They have a more precise definition on their website, I would say. But it's the idea that your body and your mind are connected, and by helping change patterns of movement and changing how we move, we change how we feel and how we experience the world.
That's good. Yeah, when I first heard about that, I thought, well, I get therapy, I get dance, and I'm like, does that mean that the therapist and I are sort of doing some interpretive dancing, and I'm talking about my feelings and what traumas I've had? Obviously, it's not quite that way, but you know how your mind sometimes works where you're like, oh, well, I understand these concepts and I get dancing and I get therapy. So I'm like, or am I ballroom dancing around a room with a therapist talking about, my issues?
No, I'm happy to explain. So
yeah, I want you to. Yeah, I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying.
No, you don't know. And that's very real, right? That's something I run into a lot. So the other part of being a dance therapist is constant, being able to advocate and define what you do, right?
Sure.
So the dance therapy piece, right? I need to be a dancer or have experience and training in dance because I'm observing movement. And then another key piece is replicating movement in my body. So I will be mirroring movement back to you, and I move at the same time as my clients a lot of times. So it would be the equivalent of, say, you're doing verbal therapy, you're having to talk at the same time as your client is talking. So it's kind of a skill. You have to keep moving because the other person will stop moving, and then your whole session goes and it's gone. So that dance piece is really important. But the mirroring is, if you take on someone's body posture, you can get a little bit of a kinesthetic sense, like a bodily somatic sense of how they're feeling and what's going on for them, and maybe a snippet of what it might be like to live in their body and the feelings and emotions that come up. So as a dancer, when I observe the movement, I can put it in my body, and then being able to use those movement interventions. So you had it pretty close, not like it's interpretive dance, but it's more improvisational.
Sure.
Than it is learning certain steps.
Got it.
And as a dance therapist, the person comes in, tells me what they want to work on, and then I'm also observing what's going on in the body, what's happening, what else are they telling me? And based on what they tell me and what I see, I'll suggest things, I'll put on music that might work. There's usually a movement warm-up. So the warm-up is key for dance therapists to analyze and see how that person is today. because they could come in and say, I'd like to work on opening up. And then meanwhile, they're like hunched over,
all closed in. Yeah.
And then I'm supposed to help them open completely to the world. And I'm like, that's not realistic in session based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So based off the movement warm up, we go towards a theme, and that could be based on our initial verbal check-in or what I saw. And from there, I can suggest interventions like, what if you try this? What if we explored just moving this part of the body? What's that like? And then talking about the emotions, feelings, sensations, memories that come up when we move those parts. And there's room to, because I have the psychotherapy background, right? It's not just dance. There's the piece of analyzing and talking about it and helping people process. That makes it therapeutic.
Definitely. Now, when you're conducting this, are you like in a dance studio or just
Yeah, I tend to use a dance studio. If my office were big enough, I could use that, and I have used that. But lately I've been renting a dance studio to have enough space.
Yeah, I was going to say, one would think you might want enough space so that you're, again, not feeling like, oh, well, I want to move around, but now there's a wall here, so I have to stop and change my direction. And then you're like, but no, that wasn't where your body wanted to go. So
yeah, exactly. We do need to have some space. So that is one of the things that may limit dance therapy. But I'm just described like on an individual level, but I also worked in like a prison setting, and I worked in inpatient psych, and those were more group therapy settings. And for that, we generally have chairs, and I'd often start the warm up seated because chairs can be pretty grounding, like everyone's seated, and also in a circle because we're trying to build that connection, just like we do in group therapy. We're trying to help people to build the rapport within the group.
Definitely.
And being in a circle versus a line, we know there's studies on that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I get it. Look, I run groups too. And yes, you first thing that you want to do is try and get the people in the group to feel that it's a safe space for them to share. I was doing it with in a high school setting. So you can imagine the sort of self-concern that every single adolescent who was in my group had about, like, I don't want to say anything, they're so focused on their own bubble, right? And here I am trying to get them. And I remember telling them, look, the first 2 or 3 sessions here are going to be crunchy. Like, I'm putting it out there. I want you to stick with it. It really, like, this is good. You just have to trust the process, even though it feels uncomfortable. And I can imagine in a prison setting, trying to do some movement therapy, that's an even higher bar to try and get people to feel comfortable.
I think if you bring yourself, right, and I'm sure you found this in the work too, is if you bring yourself and you're genuine in what you have to offer, and every therapist knows the strength of the rapport is how good the result is going to be.
Absolutely.
So once I could get those men to trust me, we could do a whole lot.
Right.
Before that, and they want to know that you're showing up every day and that you have their best interest at heart. And, and that I actually found that they were some of the most creative and interesting people. Like, I did a dance therapy group. We did a newsletter, like a prison newsletter, because they didn't have any outlet to write. We did a music writing group, like a songwriting group. So it was just the amount of creativity that was there, and that was just stymied because of the environment. I think they actually also responded very well to any kind of creative arts. Because
Absolutely. And can I ask where you were conducting?
So Salinas Valley Psychiatric Hospital, which is down in Soledad. It's Salinas Valley State Prison, but it's the city is Soledad. Yeah,
I got it.
So off of it's in California.
Cool.
So,
and did you enjoy that?
I did. I think I burnt out because that's not a system that's meant for creative, sensitive, therapeutic types.
Shocking.
Color me surprised. But the work with the clients wasn't the challenging part. It was all the systems and the how inhumane it felt at times, to also get people to a place where they could talk about their feelings. And then because it was a psychiatric hospital, we sent them back to wherever possibly made them ill. Right.
Got it.
So we got you stabilized and we're talking about your feelings. And now let's go back to that prison setting where you were sick to begin with, which is
totally. Yeah. And it's, I always joke with my clients that, an inherent part of of therapy is that inevitably we get to the good stuff 10 to 15 minutes before the end of the session. So just as we really are digging into that, you're like, oh yeah, okay, now we're touching it, and then you're like, and I'm sorry, but that's time, right? Yeah. And you can come back to it, but the fact of the matter is you're not in that same moment, that same space. And I share with my clients, I'm equally as frustrated, because when I'm working with someone, you're like, ooh, now I'm seeing something that's important, but now I have to stop. Like I don't have an opportunity to keep going. And I would assume in dance therapy, there may be, through the movement, all of a sudden you recognize there's some shift. There's something that just happened. But then you're like, and I'm sorry, we can't get into that as much.
So sometimes it'll be useful to be like, okay, so we identified you move in this way. Maybe you always keep your chin tucked down, or this is your movement pattern, and this is how you experience the world with your chin tucked down and your eyes tucked down. What if you take that knowledge and, like, just as an experiment, try drawing your chin up an inch when you remember and you're walking outside, and then can you report back a little bit about what happened? So sometimes it'll be a way of doing that to prolong the benefits of whatever movement is in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's similar to like verbal therapy. Okay, well, here's your, like, I don't like homework as a word because people have an adverse reaction to homework, but
they do.
But the idea of, can you try out that new way of moving we discovered in some small way, I
refer to it as a practice.
Practice works too. I think practice is a good one. Yeah.
Because practice is like, yeah, this is difficult. You're going to have to practice this new, way of reacting or thinking or catching yourself when this situation comes up. Like if you have anxiety, pay attention to where you're feeling it and that you recognize it. And then what can you do? The practice is, what tools are they going to use to try and lessen, that anxiety coming on? And practice seems to be good, because I'm like, that's exactly what it is. You may not be successful this week, but just keep practicing,
I think DBT also calls it practice too, because they found, because DBT has a lot of those. Like,
they do. Yeah, I have to say, I know DBT, but I don't do DBT and.
Yeah, no, but that was another word they used. I recall it was practice, and I think that is a good one, across the boards, because who knows what association people have with formal education as well, right? Like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we could.
Well, and homework implies that it's mandatory. Yeah. And that's why I was like, just like you, I need a different word to help, or words that whatever's going to work for my clients to help them remember this, like, hey, and as I said, practice is you're evolving. I point out that some of the most trusted people around us, a doctor has a practice.
Right. Meditation is a practice, like one where you go over and over, and you're not like perfecting it. Like
a therapy has a practice.
Exactly.
Lawyers have a practice. I know some people don't, but I was like, but the whole idea for me, a practice is, it's not a set thing. They're learning. You and I know, as LPCCs, we have continuing education. The whole idea is, just because we went through graduate school and we got licensed doesn't mean our learning stops. There's new things for us to learn. There's stuff to refresh our memory, because maybe I did some, suicide prevention training 5 years ago, but, my girlfriend's a nurse. She's got to do CPR training. Why? She doesn't use it, but she still has to be current in it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too, like even, and maybe people don't realize this about therapists too. It's like, if I don't understand, or not that I don't understand, but if I feel rusty on a skill or something, we consult, we do all of these things to try and be better. We read, we do these things to be better for a client, right? And that's what I love too about therapy is if you do it right, there's a humbleness, right? There's a humility to it where you are trying to learn more, and you're not expecting that you know everything about this client, even though they have the same diagnosis or features or movement of a client you've seen before. You're still experiencing each individual as their own person,
Absolutely. And every client challenges you to come up on the fly, with I know in the past this has worked for, to help people with anxiety. And I certainly have clients who have some anxiety and like, yeah, no, that didn't work. That made it worse, right? And then you're like, all right, now let me figure out what's going to work for you. So that is the exciting part. And I do love those aha moments that sometimes people have, right?
Yeah.
The things that we see, and then you're like, okay, oh, look at that. They understand that they're like, as you said, all tight. And then they go, oh gosh, yes, I guess I do that,
Yeah. I love, so what I love about dance therapy is there's such flexibility in sessions. Like I have, maybe I'll have like an older adult that is trying to just keep some of their mobility and wants to talk about the process of aging. But then I'll have someone else that's working through, like, that's a therapist that's working through their own stuff, but needed movement to do it. And I'll have someone else who just had a baby and wants to reconnect with their body. So you can have all of these different variations, or like somebody else who's never connected to their body and is like, wow, I'd like to have more of an idea, or I'd like to feel more comfortable moving. So there can be all these variations in every session. I was thinking about this as you were talking, like in my individual sessions, they can be so different to get to that aha moment, right?
Absolutely. And I used before I became a therapist, I was doing personal coaching. Yeah. And I remember when I was going through training, there was like, oh, think about your clients, and I always do. And I was like, ooh, I have this thing, and so I'm gonna build you up to the aha moment, right? So I'm like, oh, and Lisa, I observed this thing, and then I remember you said this a few times, and so I'm building up to what I think's the aha moment up here. And inevitably you get to the aha moment like 2 steps below, which is great for you, but then I'm like, but I had 2 more things that was gonna bring you to the aha. And again, it's not about me, but you're still like, oh, but there's still more information, but you've had your aha moment, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm thinking about too, sometimes we do all the foundational work and then the aha moment happens outside of session. I've definitely had that where I've been like, okay, listen to this podcast, try this, like, have you thought about your inner child? And then it's not clicking. And then somebody's listening to that podcast I recommended, and they're like, I just figured out I have an inner child. And I was like, I've been talking about this for 6 months, So that happens too. And then we have to take our ego out of it and just be happy that the person actually got there, right? Versus like,
you do, but there is, look,
there's that tiny spark of like,
for all the humbleness, there is some ego. There is like I wanted to share in the moment with you. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah. I remember having that. I was just laughing. Be like, all right, yes, you got there. However you got there, Absolutely.
Well, but it's also, I'll sit there and make a broader parallel for people. As a parent,
yeah, sure.
Your whole job is to create and raise this being that is going to leave you. That's the whole point. That's not just that's not just humans. That's all of every animal. The idea is there's offspring, and our job is to make them help to create beings that can go off and be on their own. And I've got two daughters, 19 and 21. So they're
You're getting there.
I'm getting there. And it is like, sort of like, oh my gosh, I love my daughters so much. I just can't even believe how much. And then I'm like, and they're becoming their own people, which is, I'm doing my job. However, I'm really sad. I want them to still want me. I want them to still need my help. But then I look at myself and I have a great relationship with my mom, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I need my mom, but not in the same way, you know, and haven't for quite a while, but it's still that heartbreak, you know?
Right. Hey, I did a good enough job, right? We have the good enough model of parenting, because we're always going to get something not quite perfect, or there might be a mismatch in attunement in places, and that's how things go. But yeah, that idea of, okay, they have to leave us. And just like with therapy, I don't want my clients to stay forever. I mean, I like having them around for as long as we have things to work on. But when you come to a session and then we just kind of stare at each other and we don't have anything to work on, it's time for that person to go.
Absolutely. And I tell my clients all the time, therapy is, I'm here to help you. There's something that you're stuck on. I'm here to help you figure out what you're stuck on and hopefully be able to resolve some of that. Yeah. Once we've done that, you don't need me anymore. And that's okay. I'm sad because I get to come in and come into your life here, exit out of here. I am wholly interested to know how everything's going. But that's not part of my job as a therapist to, you know, unless they decide to call and go, hey, I just wanted to let you know, and that's always great, but that just doesn't happen, you know? Yeah. So you just sort of a little blip in someone's life where you get to help them, and you got to say, oh, I really want to know how that's working out. How is that person doing?
Yeah. Or sometimes they circle back around too, which it'll be like a couple of years, 6 months, whatever, and something else. So sometimes we do get that luxury. I'll call it luxury.
It is a luxury, though, to be able to come back in to their life story and be able to catch up and go, oh, here you are. And yeah, I've certainly had, not a lot, 1 or 2 clients who they left, then something else came up, and like, I want to go back and see Xander. He was really helpful. I'm always flattered by that. But again, sometimes whatever's come up, I am not the right therapist for them.
Yeah. And I think there's that humility again, right? Of us, somebody comes to me and like, I have crippling OCD. And I'm like, oh, I'm not your person. Yeah. But I will get you to the right person. You come to me and you say, hey, I am working on this. Even in an initial phone call, if somebody calls me up and it's like, I'm looking for this. And if I know I'm not the right person, then it's okay to like move that person along to the next thing, Yeah,
absolutely. And look, I mean, for my audience, if you are considering therapy, which both Lisa and I will highly encourage because it is so very helpful, understand that it is an incredibly intimate relationship that you have to build and that you have to have trust in. I may not be the right therapist for you. My style may not be what works for you. There's no ego in that if we start to work together and I'm just not the right person. I tell my clients, I may not be the right person. You don't know until you start. And also, I know I went into, I've obviously been in therapy when I was doing my internship. I had a therapist to just long-term. I said, I'm coming in long-term. I don't have anything, but I want to be able to talk about the stuff that I'm seeing and help me process what my clients are experiencing. But there's an interview process, right? You have paid for that first session. See if this their style is right, that you feel comfortable. And I've had therapists that I'm like, awesome person, really knowledgeable, just not the right person for me.
And that's okay. I think with dance therapy, I go a little bit of a step further. Like I do just talk therapy as well, but sometimes I'll have people stick out a couple of sessions because especially if they're not dancers or they're new.
Oh, totally. But again, it may not dance therapy. They may think they want to do it and it just may not be.
Right. Or they could want a different dance therapist, right?
Yeah.
That's a possibility too. Speaking to, what you're talking about is just like, maybe they need a dance therapist that works in a more gentle manner, or doesn't, like, it just is what it is. And we, I think, as I want to say older clinicians, not like chronologically, but just is where you
experienced
are.
Clinicians.
Experienced works. It's a different way of dealing with that, what could be perceived as rejection, but is just, we're not for everyone, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's important. Like your therapy, if the person isn't right, it is absolutely, I encourage my clients to go, if I'm not the right fit for you, I will do what I can to help you find someone who is, or you get in and all of a sudden you're like, I don't have enough experience to help you with, as you said, like OCD. Certainly, I too have had training, but I'm not an expert in that. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have you spend your time with someone who can really help you. Well, Lisa, it has been so awesome to talk about all things LPCC and therapy and stuff like that. Great. So fantastic to learn more about what dance therapy is and the work that you do. And I just really admire, what you're doing. I think it's awesome. If someone is local in the Bay Area and is like, I need some dance therapy, how could people get a hold of you?
So my website is my first and last name. So it's lisamanca.com, and I'll spell that. It's M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie, A. So lisamanca.com. And I actually have done dance therapy online. So if they're in California, just FYI, it's harder on me because I have to try and be looking at movement, and sometimes you only get snippets with how Zoom
internet is,
telehealth is. But yeah, I'm open to that. And I also have a great deal of experience. I did a lot of attachment work with Diane Poole Heller, and I'm trained in her method. So if you also have something like dating anxiety or getting back into dating or have any relationship stuff you'd like to work on individually, that's another thing that I'm open to. So.
Well, that's really cool. I'm so excited I could get you here on the podcast. Truly an epic conversation, Lisa.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You bet. And I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.